Now we're ready to start on iteration number 3, and now that we learned how to construct and display a color with only one component when you use the red, let's add a second component and see what we need to do to accomplish that. So here's again our iteration plan to stay focused on what we're trying to accomplish. We completed iteration 1, we completed iteration 2, now we are in iteration 3 to add the green component. So again, following the app development process, 3 steps: problem formulation, solution formulation, and solution implementation. So in the problem formulation, the scope in the scope, use green component in addition to the red component to mix the color. That's basically it, very simple. As you can see, it's a very tiny bit of the original project problem, and that's what iteration is about. You do smaller steps, smaller projects in order to reach the full plan. Testing. We first need to make sure that what we did in the previous iterations still work. So in a situation like this, we need to run all the tests in the previous iterations. Then these are new tests specifically for this iteration. So I'm gonna assume I don't have red, so I'll put red to 0 and then put green to 1, and that should give me a full green, and then I can put green to 0 and that should give me the black. I can also mix the red and the green and observe a different color. Solution formulation follows the model view controller. So the model already has a red component and the UI view and so on. Now we need to add one more, which is a value to represent the green. And then this will be a decimal value, decimal number. We'll use the type float for that. The view also doesn't change. We need to add another slider to represent or to allow the user to input a value for the green component of the color. The controller will have the same connection. I will need to connect to that new slider as an outlet, and I also need to connect to the slider as an action. Now here comes a question: should I connect the slider to the same action function that I had with the red, or should each slider has its own function module? You can try it both ways. The key to make a decision like that is think about what is a function. The function represents a task. It does not represent the data. You can apply the same task on multiple data. So if the task does not change, then all the data should go to the same function. You do not duplicate functions just because the data has changed. If the task changed, that's when you make a new function. So in our case, the task of retrieving the slider values and changing the color stays the same. Whether it's a red slider, a green slider, or any slider, the task remains the same. So I will connect the green slider with the existing function that changes the color. Because the function represents an action, you can have the function listens to or responds to multiple actions. That's different than an outlet, because an outlet represents a place of memory that holds a value. So each variable in the controller that's connected to an outlet, each outlet connection need to have its own variable. But an action, you can have multiple components, user interface components, linking to a single function in the software. So here the app will do the same as before, in addition to retrieving the green value and adding it to initialize the color. When should the app do that? It should do that when the red slider changes and when the green slider changes. So now we have two events. Each of them can generate the changing the color action. So what the steps at the implementation of the solution? First, we need to work on the view. So we add a second slider component, set up its properties, connect that slider to the controller as an action, and then we're going to connect it to the same function. Then connect the second slider to the controller as an outlet so that we can have ability to retrieve its data. Then implement the controller function. The controller function had 3 steps: retrieve the color, and we need a new instruction to retrieve the green color. initialize the color object, and the instruction to initialize the color is going to stay the same. The only difference here is that instead of passing on a value of 0 to the green component, we're going to pass on the slider value, or the value we retrieved from the green slider, as our value. Then the step where we change the background color of the view, that step is not going to change. So that's going to be our iteration number 3. So let's go ahead and create.